guys, we are back for round 3 with Tania Gomez. If you want to find out any of her details below, please do check that. We also have parts 1 and 2 of the interview where we have covered all things NDIS, Tania's amazing history, and also all the good things that they are doing at Strawberry Solutions. Obviously, Tania, you've been around for a while in the vet industry, in and out in a whole bunch of different aspects. You said before that you actually were on the board with ITECA before, as well with, what were they? What were they before ITECA? ACPET before ITECA. Obviously, our industry is going through a really interesting time at the moment. I've been, talking to a lot of people. I've been in since I think 2006, 2007, and I was like, it's feeling very 2009, 2016 to me again. And our industry, I feel like our industry is on like a 7-year kind of ebb and flow. It tends to be how we operate. You are currently studying a PhD on, what makes, good businesses successful, what makes RTOs successful. When you're providing advice to RTOs, when you're working with RTOs, what are you seeing in our industry at the moment, and what is the advice that you're giving to, like, let's say a newer RTO owner, or an international RTO owner who's looking at the things and going, okay, how do I get through the next 2 years and make sure that I'm going to be okay and that my staff are going to be okay? What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, look, I agree. I came into the vet space during all of the many CRICOS issues. I worked at MEGT in CRICOS, was was my first training job, and I also worked in marketing in the international department. And it was right when, I think it was maybe my 3rd day that I worked there, that all of the commercial cookery kitchens in our street was full of international providers, and they just locked the doors, and the regulator went and locked out students, and we had many crying students in our waiting room that were just like, please give me a COE because my college has been closed. And it was a really punitive, really scary time. And it does, everything I've been reading and seeing in the space is very reminiscent of that time. I do feel like being in the space for so long that it is cyclical. It does go around. It seems to be, especially in international education, that international education is, in a lot of trouble, in the sin bin with the regulator, and then all of a sudden they remember how much, it's our 2nd largest export, and it's so valuable to the economy. Yeah, so important to the economy, and then all of a sudden it's the golden child for a few years, and we're talking about trade delegations, and we're doing a lot of investment in the space, and we're trying to get other people to invest in education, and then it just swings the other way. And I think actually it's the same for domestic providers with funding contracts. I think that's actually very much more related to if it's a Liberal or Labor government. But it seems to be the same. It seems to be RTOs, do an amazing job, then all of a sudden they don't, and everybody hates them, and then all of a sudden they're amazing. But you still have the statistics that the majority of students are happy with training, with vet training, with RTOs, with private RTOs, and that employers are happy. I think it's really hard.
I'm the middle child of the sector. I feel this very strongly.
Absolutely. But I've even said that the higher education sector has a lot of pressure on it at the moment as well, especially around the CRICOS side of things and also the funding side of things. I think it's easier said than done, but for a new RTO, I would be saying just stick it out. I think at these times, the industry usually does have a big clear out, and I think it does clear out the people who aren't there for the right reasons. So I kind of think in some respects, let them go. If it's too hard for you, if you can't manage this level of change and scrutiny, then maybe it's not the right place for you, because I can't see that it's going to get easier. I think in some respects it does get easier, but I think in most respects providers just get better with dealing with it, right? They start to understand what the government wants, They take compliance seriously. They make sure that quality is a focus, and not a focus for the regulator, but a focus for actually helping them grow a sustainable business. I often talk about, regulatory compliance as just the minimum requirement. And what we should always be aiming for is to build a strong foundation of quality over and above the minimum, and use that as the foundation to build your home on or your business on as the only way. And when the government changes things, that's an earthquake, right? And so if you haven't built a strong foundation, and that includes things like enough of a financial buffer in your bank account. In an RTO, most businesses, I would say, need a 3-month buffer. In an RTO, I would be saying you want a 6 to 12-month buffer, because you just don't know what changes are going to come, and it's so highly dependent on government or government investment and funding.
And I think it's showing that diversity of your profile as well, like having a mix of fee for service, state domestic funding across more than one contract. Like across more than one training package generally is what I try to advise as well, because, we know that the funding for training packages kind of comes and goes. We're about to see another round of that. So I think having that diversity, and you're right, having a backup of a couple of months going, okay, we know we can operate for, so-and-so months, but it's like you said at that very beginning, there are so many RTO owners that, like, if I go to them, how many students do you have at the moment? How many months can you go without bringing any money in? How many future enrollments do you actually have, like, ready to go? A lot of them are not aware of that sort of information. And, like, I think that digitization process that you talk to, that's a really important piece of that process, is like having good processes, having a good digital process, having a really good digital system should allow you to have a lot of that information to hand and regularly have that updated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right with diversification. With any business, you are minimizing risk by having your finger in many pies, as long as you can manage the complication of the compliance requirements that adding something else brings. Changing training package doesn't change too much. It just means you need trainers with those skill sets. I also like to suggest that people look outside of one funding scheme as well. So if you are an RTO, maybe there's something else that you can also have, whether it's another funding bucket, or you move into CRICOS, or you look at higher education, but maybe looking at something like the NDIS, or something, especially if you were teaching in the CHC or the HLT training packages, maybe it makes sense that you also diversify inside other government schemes that are similar-ish and complement your business. I think fee for service is also something that is really an important element of what you do, and maybe it's looking at short courses as well as the micro credentialing, having a look at how do you support the employers that you work with their needs. So maybe they're not interested in putting people through a whole Cert 3 program, but maybe they're interested in one topic within that, and that could be something that they train their workforce in as another way to diversify, using your existing resources, your existing people, your existing skill sets, that will also add to your reputation as well as your revenue streams.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think in and around the fee for service stuff, I think if you have a fee for service, like, I know when going through regulator audits and STA audits, that is something that they do tend to look for. Like, they want to see that you're not just fully reliant on this one thing. And I think to some extent, it can also enforce that quality focus of customer service, because if you're offering a service that people are willing to come in and pay for, then there is kind of going to be that front end focus of, like, yeah, we've got to actually ensure that this is a product that people see value in, and I think that it's important for RTOs, especially RTOs that operate very much in the CRICOS space and only in the government funding space, that can quite easily get lost of, like, if all you're doing is like job seeker programs and things like that, it can be really easy to lose focus on, like, the learner and on the actual quality of the product, because quite often the focus gets diverted into, like, ensuring that all of the contractual requirements are met, as opposed to, giving that service, that one-on-one service to a learner who has paid their own money to come and participate in, you know, a product and a service that you're offering.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess the last, obviously the last like big change that we're seeing in the sector, and being an L&D developer, have you guys made any changes in and around AI? Like, how are you seeing AI change our sector? I know that Canva and Accelerate are both looking at like using AI features for short course marking, you know, bringing in kind of the AI assistance through their LMS functionalities and things like that. How do you see AI transforming our industry? How do you see our industry kind of adapting to it over the next maybe like 1 year, 5 year, 10 years?
Yeah, I think AI is, you know, it's definitely something that's going to improve what we do. I'm quite positive around it. I know there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of insecurities or fear around it, but I really think that it's positive in most respects. I've seen and we've built for clients some pretty cool chat bots that can be used in assessment, or like while someone is studying online, they have a chat bot that they can ask those questions to. I think things like building out question banks becomes doable. I think the challenge that there's always been in the RTO space is the changing of the training packages, that, you know, every 3 to 5 years you've got this huge shift. So it almost feels like RTOs don't want to invest in creating great learning when they know there's a 3 to 5 year window on that. The return on investment doesn't seem large enough. I feel like with AI, we now have the opportunity that potentially you could develop really great learning and then give all of that to the AI and say, look, this is it, here's the current changes, update that content to those changes, and it will do that manual work that used to take a team of many people and many months to do. I think that that's a really practical implication for the vet space that should actually reduce the cost of developing learning, which should mean we have more funds to develop better learning and use better learning tools and invest in those, because a lot of that admin side of work is then able to be done by AI.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting space. Like, I feel that I mean, our team uses AI all the time, and it's definitely a double-edged sword. Like, the one thing that I do constantly say to team members is like, it's a tool. It's a tool. At the end of the day, you still have to read every word, every sentence that comes out of it, make sure that it makes sense, make sure that the overarching flow, like, it's not as sophisticated as people like to think yet. The rate at which it's becoming more and more sophisticated is mind-blowing. And I think 3 years from now, what we'll be dealing with is going to be incredibly different than what we're dealing with now. But at the end of the day, it's a tool. Like, it's an amazing tool, but it's a tool. And it's still going to rely on people to check things. So, but it does give the opportunity to create really cool, bespoke content, to update content a lot more easily, to cross-check. I use mine like a personal assistant, and I just ask it random questions, and, I talk to him on a night time when I'm writing, when I'm trying to design something, and ask if it makes sense. So I think it's fantastic from that perspective. It's going to be really interesting to see. It's so much a chicken and the egg space. Like, I'm constantly looking at students' assessments, and RTOs are sending this to me going, like, is this AI? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's 100% AI. And then I look at other ones and I'm like, oh, like, it's got an AI feel to it. But obviously the students are getting much better with their prompts of knowing how to avoid the American spelling and knowing how to avoid that kind of dot point responses. So it's going to be a really fun, I feel like, chicken and egg kind of a catch-up play from a learning perspective and a trainer perspective over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I read something the other day that said that out of all of the academic literature that's come out in the past 12 months, there was something like a 5,000% increase in the word delve, because that is an AI word. And
right.
was built into ChatGPT, and by all the academics using it, it has inserted this delve word, and that there's only a few times in history that words have had that much of an increase. And they gave the history about all these other times, and it was incredibly interesting to actually think about how something like ChatGPT is going to impact our everyday language, because if it's in everything we read, then it's going to be in everything that we say, and then it's going to, you know, be a cycle. But even in my own studies, I've been trying so hard not to use ChatGPT, because I'm like, you know, I know that it's there, and it's almost taunting me that it's not.
Yes.
It's like I can't do it because I feel like I really need to do this myself, and I don't want to impact my reputation, or by someone thinking that I haven't done it myself. But it is, you know, I do ask it questions, and I do ask it to like find me other things to read, but I'm being really careful of how I use it. And even actually this week, my 10-year-old and my 6-year-old have a public speaking contest on Monday, and they have to do a speech. And my 6-year-old obviously wrote himself. His is about ants. And my 10-year-old wrote one around why rugby is better than basketball. And I 100% know he used ChatGPT in how it was formatted and how he did it in 15 minutes. But I asked him, did you use it? And he's like, I just used it to proofread it. And I was like, okay. I let it go, because I'm kind of like, well, I'm not the teacher. Let's see how the teacher handles this. You know, I'm kind of proud of him for finding a tool that's going to help him to solve his problem. And I think if the exam's about public speaking, it should be about his delivery as opposed to how he got the research. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. It's a really hard question of how do we actually embrace the use of AI and use it as a tool. It's almost like when computers first came out, you know, is it bad that you type instead of write? Does that mean that it's less yours? If you're good enough to use that as a tool, how do we actually embrace that and redefine the use of how AI is used in things like assessment?
And I mean, in the higher education sector in particular, like with things like PhDs and master's degrees, you know, anything that is kind of by that research sort of thing, it's going to be really interesting to see long-term the impact that has. Is like, you know, is it your ability to synthesize information? Is it your ability to collate, extract the key information, and then be able to produce, you know, like readable, understandable, digestible content? Like, what is the goal of that kind of that master's or that PhD? And what is really the skill set that we're looking to bring out? You know, I think it's a really interesting space to see like what's actually going to happen over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and how higher education providers actually respond to that will be really interesting also.
And there's lots of different approaches at the moment. We've got like head in the sand, we've got fully embrace, and we've got everywhere in between happening at the moment. So it'll be interesting to kind of see like who comes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Tania. It was awesome. If you can you let the audience know where is the best place to find you?
Yeah, I'm on all of the socials as Tania Gomez Consulting, or you can check out Strawberry Solutions on Instagram, our website, or LinkedIn. Yeah, happy to answer any questions, and for anyone to connect if they have any further questions for me.
Guys, I will have all of those details below, as we always do. If you do disagree with anything we've said, by all means, feel free to disagree, but do so respectfully. You can find all of our details below. You can also find this entire series on our YouTube channel under 2024 interview series. Thank you so much, Tania, for your time. It was awesome to speak to you today. And guys, go out, be well, focus on quality in your RTOs, and touch grass from time to time. My name is Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services.